Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Chris Hernandez-Roy, the Senior Fellow and Deputy Director of the Americas Program at CSIS. Thank you for joining us today for a conversation on prospects and pitfalls for security assistance in Haiti, which we're organizing in conjunction with Haiti Policy House. Before we begin, I want to make a few announcements. First of all, this event will last approximately 90 minutes. Following the moderated portion of our discussion, we'll field questions from the audience. Please submit questions by clicking on the, quote, Ask Live Questions, unquote, link on the event page. Please note that a recording of this discussion will be made available on the CSIS webpage following the end of the event. For 2 years, Haiti has been gripped by a series of interlocking political, humanitarian, and security challenges. From escalating gang violence, which today has expanded from Port-au-Prince to rural areas, according to a UN report released last week, to a resurgence of cholera after 3 years with no new cases, Haitian institutions and society have been stretched to their breaking point. Indeed, a forthcoming article from the CSIS Global Food and Water Security Program has classified the situation in Haiti as a complex humanitarian emergency owing to the intertwined and entrenched nature of these crises. Nevertheless, the people of Haiti have continued to display resilience to tackle these monumental challenges. While the international community has been slow to respond to calls for assistance to Haiti, there appears to be room for change after the UN Security Council authorized a security assistance mission to be led by Kenya. The deployment of this force has stalled, however, amid Kenya's domestic politics, but if realized, would see 1,000 police officers deployed to Haiti in order to help the country tackle criminal violence, and hopefully create a breathing space for renewed efforts to improve public health, sanitation, and food security. While these developments are encouraging, we must not lose sight of the long and troubled history of foreign interventions in Haiti. Indeed, recent and much larger multilateral peacekeeping missions not only struggled to accomplish their stabilization and security goals, but they were also plagued by gross misconduct by some of the personnel deployed. To deliver effective security assistance and meaningfully improve the lives of the Haitian people, any security mission must prioritize Haitian voices. They must also learn from the missions that came before and ensure proper accountability mechanisms are in place to avoid replicating the mistakes of the past. For this reason, we're honored to be putting together this event today in partnership with Haiti Policy House, a think tank focused on geopolitical issues specific to Haiti and led by a group of Haitian Americans committed to finding solutions to these challenges. I now have the distinct pleasure of introducing Wolf Pamphile, the founder of Haiti Policy House, to deliver some keynote remarks. Wolf was born and raised in Cap-Haïtien before moving to Brooklyn, New York with his family at the age of 14. In the past decade, he's launched several volunteer-led initiatives to support Haitian migrants, including working with elected officials in 2021 to establish an immigration clinic for Haitians affected by the Rio Grande border crisis. Before founding Haiti Policy House, Wolf worked at the U.S. Department of Commerce, managing congressional outreach, strategic planning, data analysis, and performance evaluation program. Wolf, welcome.
Bonjour, bonjour, good morning. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chris, Ryan, and the CSIS Americas team. Thank you for hosting this event with us with Haiti Policy House. My name is Wolf Pamphile. I'm the founder and executive director of Haiti Policy House. Haiti Policy House is a think tank based right here in Washington, D.C., focused on finding solutions for Haiti and problem of fragility today and tomorrow. Our scope covers governance, security, human rights, economic development, health and well-being of all Haitians. The need for Haiti Policy House became evident in hearing time after time again, right here in DC, that things like Haiti is not a priority, or Haiti is not even a country at the moment. which these are all things that, sting us, Haitians who are really trying to make change in the space. And right here in DC, we have terms like Haiti fatigue that really take a hold of Congress or even the policymakers right here. And those experiences solidified the need for Haiti Policy House and creating a space that worked tirelessly to drive change in Haiti and in the diaspora. By bringing together a group of diverse experts, Haiti Policy House aimed to address the challenges facing Haiti and develop innovative and effective solutions to our country's problems. Throughout the world, and even the Caribbean, we can see how think tanks have contributed to the development of specific countries, like Costa Rica, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, all have hundreds of think tanks combined together. And right here in DC, we have hundreds more think tanks dedicated to the development of the United States. With that in mind, we felt it was critical to create Haiti Policy House, a space dedicated to Haiti 24/7 and thinking 20 years ahead. Our goal is to provide expertise on initiatives like the potential multinational security support and many policies created in DC that impact the lives of Haitians, yet lack the much needed input of Haitian experts. Those policies, when applied, are often short-sighted and have disastrous impact on our vulnerable population and our fragile infrastructure. At Haiti Policy House, we are committed to elevating Haitian voices in the global conversation, determining Haiti's future. As we delve into this work, I want to thank our amazing team, Gloria Blaise, Naika Pierre, Faratima, Esnol Jure, and our amazing board of directors, as well as CSIS for co-hosting this event with us. And also want to recognize and thank Haitian organizations that's been here before us, like the Association of Haitian Professionals and the Journal of Haitian Studies, for their amazing work in the community and with the community. And lastly, I'll close with a few words in Creole. I'll say, tout Haïtien à la honte bade, qui tout Haïti, qui tout Chili, qui tout Saint-Domingue, Brésil, aux États-Unis, France, mais un peu chay palou. Nous commencer et nous pas camper, Creole parler, Creole comprendre. Thank you very much. Merci un peu.
Thank you very much, Wolf, for your remarks. And now I'm very pleased to introduce our panelists, one of whom is here in person with me, and the other three are coming to us from remote locations. Georges Foriol, Senior Associate with the CSIS Americas Program. Georges served until 2020 as Vice President of Grants, Operations, and Evaluation at the National Endowment for Democracy. Prior to that, he held a number of positions here at CSIS, including as Director and Senior Fellow of the Americas Program. Georges is also a Fellow with the Caribbean Policy Consortium and a think tank Haiti steering group member, a partnership of the Université de Quisqueya in Haiti and the Inter-American Dialogue. Joining us online is our next speaker, Dr. Jerry Chandler, the Director General of the Direction Générale de la Protection Civile of Haiti. He previously served as Director of Operations and Medical Director of Haiti Air Ambulance, the first air medical operation in the country. He was also advisor of the Office of the First Lady of Haiti for Health and Medical Emergency Matters. Our next speaker will be Marcia Michel, Liaison Coordinator for the Climate Change Working Group at Women of Color Advancing Peace, Security, and Conflict. An analytical leader and problem solver, she has over 15 years of experience leading teams, building and implementing programs and strategies that effectively respond to and prevent national disasters, climate change, advancing health equity, food insecurity, and malnutrition amongst the most vulnerable. Advancing food security, not food insecurity. Our final speaker is Fritznel Octave, a veteran journalist and author who has dedicated over 2 decades of his career to report on issues and policies that affect ordinary Haitians in their daily struggles. In addition to his reporting, he's the author of Haiti Between Pestilence and Hope, a book that charts Haiti's political instability and economic challenges throughout its modern history. So, Georges, in order to kick this off, over to you for some opening remarks.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, CSIS and the Haiti Policy House for really organizing this very timely session on Haiti. When assessing sort of the main theme of this panel and the prospects for international security assistance to Haiti, I'm looking at sort of the following key issues. As you noted in your introduction, so did Wolf, after sort of 18 months or even more of frustrations, one can see the deployment, particularly of the Kenyan police contingent, and the more recent UN security vote as at least a positive development. To me, at least, it shifts the debate to some degree from is anyone going to assist and help Haiti to how to best synchronize other initiatives with this particular security effort. Obviously, 1,000 Kenyans is not going to resolve Haiti's social and economic problems, let alone political process. But at least something is in train, if you will, and other initiatives now need to be operationalized, I think, simultaneously, if you will, with the deployment of an international security force. To me, there are three areas that I tend to want to focus on. I'll mention all three of them, but focus on the third one specifically in these comments. The first one is obviously a series of initiatives that entail community and neighborhood initiatives. That's where the trust, the credibility, if you will, of any international effort is going to be ultimately have to be anchored to. Secondly, as mentioned in your introduction, Chris, clearly a focus on various aspects of humanitarian assistance that needs to flow immediately to the right places and safely and securely. The third area, which worries me a little bit more, is the governance initiatives, that environment. Let me just say a few comments about that. On one hand, despite the collapse of Haiti's sort of social infrastructure, educational system, civil society, Haiti's civil society and political community remains a vibrant environment. However, it lacks, at this point, a coherency that can advance the country towards a sustainable governance consensus and then carry the country out of the current crisis. This is not an easy process. At the same time, the level of mistrust that, let's face it, exists regarding or towards the interim prime minister, Ariane Henry, is very high, and I think that issue needs to be addressed up front. It is a problem that the international security force is going to face very quickly. It needs to have a reliable partner in Haiti that actually provides sustainable long-term governance, as well as some sort of a mechanism out of the immediate crisis. In this regard, I'm particularly focusing on CARICOM's, Caribbean Community's Eminent Persons Group mediating efforts. They've been ongoing for about 6 months now, and I gather they're due to return sometime in mid-December this month. There's also behind-the-scenes mediation efforts by British diplomat Jonathan Powell. What's interesting in the Eminent Persons Group effort is that they've just recently issued, I think the last 2 weeks, a detailed roadmap, including an approximate timetable and specific responsibilities for those that would be involved in this process. All of this being somewhat anchored to what's already in place, an expansion of the High Transition Council, which has been really in existence for several months, but really is non-functioning. Significantly, the roadmap also draws attention to a governance formula, transition formula that ensures that neither party, neither the Transition Council, neither the interim prime minister can in effect get rid of each other during this transition, and that all parties involved in this process, in this transitional governance structure, would not be involved in the follow-on national election calendar. There wouldn't be candidates, they would not be part of that process. So I view the EPG's return to Haiti before Christmas in some ways as a defining moment for success of the international security mission sometime in early 2024. Without that governance consensus, I become a bit more nervous, if you will, than I already am. And I think that ultimately is going to be an issue which hopefully can be determined more clearly over the next several weeks. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Georges. And you've already anticipated some of the questions that I'm going to ask you, particularly around governance, as it seems very difficult to advance in the security front if there's not advances in parallel, at least, on the governance front. All right. Thank you very much for that. Dr. Chandler, could we have your remarks, please?
Absolutely. I'm just making sure that you guys can hear me well.
We can hear you just fine.
Excellent. Well, it's a pleasure and an honor to be part of that panel. And I thank CSIS and Haiti Policy House for having me. I am Jerry Chandler, and I am the Director General for Protection Civil. Protection Civil is the government office that handles disasters and emergencies at the national level. So our job is to, our work, our scope is to coordinate prevention, mitigation, and also assistance and response to populations when they are in distress. Originally, we were in the past tasked with everything that was related to natural disasters, but in recent times, and when I say recent, I'm talking about the last 3 years, we had to deal with COVID. We were part of the COVID response, and now we have also have to deal with man-made disasters, such as this crisis that's currently ongoing. And just to give you guys a little, somewhat an outlook of the current situation, we've been talking about a situation of a crisis that is based out of gang violence, but that also has a serious impact on the population and on the community. And that situation has generated what we call internally displaced people, because we have a lot of people, when they are being attacked and when they are being subjected to violence, that move, and you have the internal migration movement. Last situation report that goes up to November 30th, we had about 29,000 internally displaced people, and they were located in about 34 sites within the metropolitan area of Port-au-Prince. And there are some that are scattered in other communities around the capital. I'm talking about Taba, I'm talking about Corfu and a few other places. This situation is also a hotbed for the resurgence of the cholera, because indeed there's been cholera cases that were reported in municipalities like Pitfalls, like Gonave, and all of these places are places where we have registered people, internally displaced people, that gather in what I would call ITP sites. So this has certainly marked a significant, I would say, a significant outburst in the cholera crisis that's been resurging. So we've been working with the Ministry of Health that's doing surveillance, and that's assessing and working towards curbing the new cholera outbreak. Parallel to that, there is also a similar situation developing in the Humanitarian. People don't talk about it much because Humanitarian is a department that's more towards the north, and it's kind of isolated because, again, of the gang violence situation. But we do have IDPs in that area. We're talking about a group of about 5,000 people, and this group is even more complicated for them because these are people that live off of the agricultural work that they do and the crops that they work on. And since they can't do it, it becomes really complicated and dire for them. That's for one. Second, it is logistically very complicated to assist them because we have an access problem. We have to be able to get there and bring assistance to those people. And speaking of access and response, I want to also make the point about the current IDPs that are in the metropolitan area. So ever since we have had I would say, a peak of the crisis since August 14 of this year, we, Protection Civil and all of its partners, we have gathered and we have put together a task force, what we call the National Emergency Crisis Group, to actually work and bring response. And that response was what? It was water and sanitation. So bring water and sanitation to those people that are in places that are not made for that. So making sure that they get clean water, potable water, and also make sure that the water that they use is being processed correctly. So in order to try to curb or avoid the cholera to keep going. We also had to address food security. So initially we started by distributing hot meals, but since for the past 2 weeks we have changed the strategy. Instead of providing the hot meals, we've been providing cash transfer. So we give cash to the families so they can actually go on. I mean, we don't give, we transfer cash to the families. They can actually go on to the markets and provide food commodities for themselves so they can sustain themselves. We also work with the Ministry of Health, as I previously mentioned, so they can actually address the cholera crisis, but also, what more importantly, break the cycle of transmission of cholera with the distribution of chlorine and soap and clean water, so we can make sure that the cholera outbreak can be curbed and be controlled. Also, one important point for us is also to address what we call the protection issues. Protection issues being gender-based violence, violence on people with difficulties for mobility, what we call the vulnerable groups. So we have a lot of work that's being done to have a surveillance, address, and also work with people that are subjected or victims of this type of issue. So all in all, this is what we're doing right now. But then again, thinking about the crisis at large, definitely once we do have the MSS, the mission that's coming, the Kenyan-led mission that's coming, we are going to have to do a massive humanitarian mission to assist that population, bring it back home, and bring life back to the community. And I guess I will have the opportunity to elaborate more on that as we go within that panel. So I guess I'll stop for now, and I'm going to be here, like I said, to elaborate on it further down the road. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chandler. Marcia, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Just a quick correction. I am an independent consultant and a former humanitarian who worked for USAID for over a decade. And I volunteer with the Women, Peace, and Security Group based in Washington, D.C. First of all, thank you for this invitation. It's a pleasure to participate on this panel to discuss the upcoming Kenyan force-led mission to Haiti to address the complex security challenges that the country is facing. Haiti has been dealing with a multifaceted security, political, and humanitarian issues that have deeply impacted Haitians. And recently, at the request of the Haitian Prime Minister and the international community, the Kenyan force is possibly going to Haiti to help combat gang violence. While they'll be going there, there's still a distrust in an international force going to Haiti, as some of you has mentioned earlier, because of major security, major issues that happened with these forces, sexual violence and abuse against women, and the cholera outbreak in Haiti. With this said, I urge caution with any labels that purports the Kenyan-led force to resolve any issue. I think there's an opportunity for this force to reduce violence in Haiti and open to decrease violence and give room for political actors to come together for peaceful resolution to the political stalemate and be able to address the major issues that the country is facing right now. So I'm looking forward to discussing all these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcia, and forgive the oversight in your CV. Fritznel, over to you, please. I think you're on mute.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I need to thank Haiti Policy House and CSIS Americas group for inviting me to participate with this panel on security challenges in Haiti and the possible Kenyan-led mission to reduce the insecurity and provide peaceful environment for Haiti to govern. When it comes to security in Haiti, we need to see it as a multifaceted crisis. It's not just a problem of insecurity. I always believe, based on what I have been observed in Haiti for decades, the Haitian people is not a violent people. We don't have a broad security issue in Haiti. We have a tiny group of people. It has been for the longest, as it's a group that wants to control everything, and then they fuel this kind of insecurity, this kind of violence, particularly in the capital city of Port-au-Prince and its surroundings. And then it's turned with the last couple of years, and since the assassination of the president, Jovenel Moïse, it's tend to spread wider. But in general, it's just Port-au-Prince. Everything that goes wrong or that goes well with Haiti starts with Port-au-Prince. So we need to understand that that's the reason why we have failed mission in the past, because they're always, the international community, Haitian leaders, they always think in terms of Port-au-Prince, centralize everything in Port-au-Prince. But we have a situation where you have socioeconomic problems, you have infrastructural problems, and you have health crises from time to time. You have a lot of different layers of that, that basically collided together to create a humanitarian crisis of a difficult proportion. So in order to really resolve it, we need to take a holistic approach. We need to understand all these different aspects of it, and then really tackle the root cause of it. So that's the only way we can have a sustainable solution, a durable peace in Haiti, where everyone can strive and live, as a people. With that being said, maybe I'm stepping on toes, but it's probably necessary, because without thinking that way, we're not going to be able to have a nation that's not really made of crisis. So the leaders, I'm talking about the oligarchs, the political leaders, they need to really reframe their mindset. Not just about a country, a nation for what it is, but also in terms of international assistance, international help. They need to understand that everything should be designed and, thought through by them directly. The framework for help, anything that's really we need as a nation, as support, need to be designed from within, with dialogue, with communication, with all these different groups on the ground, grassroots, communities organization, human rights organizations. So all these different entities and different stakeholders in Haiti, from a national perspective, need to come together with a plan a program that we all agree on. When I say all, I know you will never, it's incredible to have a plan where everyone 100% agree on, but we'll say the majority. We'll have a consensus around what we want as a country, where we want to go, next 20, 30, 50, 40 years. And so that's the time we're going to have durable solution to our problems. Not because 1,000 or so international police forces led by Kenya are going to come to Haiti, or even more, because we have the national police in Haiti. So why the national police cannot, provide basic security to the citizen of the country? So we need to figure out all these different issues, what causing the problems, and then that's when we can find a doable solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fritznel. Georges, there is a tremendous amount of stuff to unpack here. I think the Kenyans are arriving, or hopefully will be arriving, as you said, in early 2024, in a situation in Haiti that's really unprecedented in terms of the arrival of, in the past, other missions. The conditions in Haiti are much worse, ranging from probably a much deeper political crisis, clearly a much greater humanitarian crisis, current and on the back of a series of problems that have occurred ever since the earthquake, moving on forward. The gang situation is out of control. It's moved from Port-au-Prince to other parts of the country. Clearly a very, very different scenario. Yet, a new mission is coming in. There have been missions in the past. What can what can we learn from the previous missions? And what can this Kenyan-led mission do differently in order to avoid certain pitfalls that previous missions fell into?
Yes, and we've already heard some comments from the panelists about the evaluation, if you will, of previous efforts,
yep.
Which I think overall, and there's a whole literature now, has been rather depressing to read, frankly. Despite 3 major interventions, a lot of resources, and not much really left behind. I tend to kind of focus on maybe 2 suggestions. One of them may be somewhat controversial, which is for all of the failures of the past UN interventions, there may be a few areas that I think are worth focusing on, which is that it did, particularly the intervention after 2010, it did address to some degree the gang and violence factor. The problem, my sense, is that it wasn't really accompanied by simultaneous socio and economic efforts that ultimately provide an alternative of neighborhood activity and jobs and future, if you will, which doesn't ultimately exist at this point. And I think that's something that really needs to be done in tandem with the intervention, if you will, from the outside in terms of a security force. Secondly, and in fact, Fritznel just mentioned in passing in his opening comments, which is the HNP, the Police Nationale d'Haïti, the HNP, the National Police of Haiti. My sense is that at this point, despite what now over almost 2 decades of international support, particularly from the United States and other key actors, the problem may be one of trying to assess exactly what is the mission statement of the Haitian National Police. And my sense has become too broad, too general. It's kind of an all-purpose security force that ultimately is not able to do much of what it ultimately is trying to achieve. So it's not simply the challenge of training more of them, but really trying to focus maybe up front with Haitian partners as to what, in fact, does a Haitian National Police do? What are its core missions? And maybe as a result begin to diversify a little bit, maybe identify other capabilities that ultimately can address Haiti's overall national security needs, rather than simply repeating, if you will, kind of a broad-based training in the hope somehow at some point that the HNP will achieve what everyone hopes it will. I think so. I would focus on those 2 issues. One of them is that an international security force has to have simultaneously, as previous panels have already mentioned, a social and economic and humanitarian initiative done in tandem, not 6 months or a year later. And secondly, try to focus a little more clearly on what, in fact, is the HNP mission statement. What is it really capable of doing? and what else do we need to do to be able to expand, if you will, those national security capabilities.
And are you seeing this social and economic support? You're clearly seeing it as an essential component to come in parallel to the security effort. But who would lead that component, the social and economic?
This is where, in fact, you need to have a partnership with some sort of a governance structure, because that can't operate in a vacuum. You already have Haiti, in some ways, being populated, I might say, by a lot of private initiatives and NGOs and international voluntary groups that are well-intentioned, but it's sort of a mosaic of efforts. And I think that needs, as a result, part of the issue is needs to have a partnership with the Haitian governance structure that ultimately becomes the key interlocutor, if you will, for international organizations and for international partners. Including, I might add also, provide some guidance and direction in terms of what's left of the Haitian private sector.
Right. Dr. Chandler, you mentioned, of course, that the collapsed security environment in Haiti has compounded the humanitarian challenges, most significantly in healthcare and emergency medical services. What specific opportunities are there for the security mission to get a handle on the public health crisis? What spaces does the security mission, obviously they're not doctors, but what spaces do they need to create for medical teams, for medical services to be able to more effectively attend to the population's needs?
Okay, that question is relatively broad, and as you said, they're not, that mission is a security mission per se. It's not specifically oriented or addressing health issues or specific issues towards the population. This portion of the work would have to be done by the appointed, I would say, bodies that are there for, that are supposed to be doing that job. So the idea, and that's kind of what the plan is right now, we're already working on it, as I mentioned previously, is to be able to capitalize on the fact that this security mission is going to restore security and I would say get us give us an environment where we responders, we health professionals, we people that are assisting the population can actually access and do and get the work done, the work as it is supposed to be. And I would kind of surf on what George was saying in the sense that that is the plan. That's the plan that we're contemplating, that we're working on, and that we're working on with our partners. It's just that we're doing it within what we call the disaster management cycle, which is doing, once you do have a materialization of the threat, you have to do response, and once you finish doing the response, you do what we call recovery. So what George mentioned as socioeconomic would be the recovery part. So the idea for us is for us as the protection civil, because protection civil is not just the institution, but it is a nexus. It is a coalition, a group of various institutions of the government, the civil society, private sector, international community partners, donors, where we sit down, we work together, and we put our efforts together. Our job as protection civil, or as the Direction General of Protection Civil, is to actually do the coordination of all of that work, so we can make sure that the resources are utilized correctly. So to get back to the question that you specifically asked regarding the opportunities, well, the opportunities will be, like I said, the key, I would say, priority would be to actually give us access. Give us the possibility to go towards the population, so we can actually get the work done, do education, do education, making sure we provide the people with what they need, and then accompany that population to relocate itself where it needs to be. So that would be the plan. Now, like I said, it is the security piece is not. I don't know anything about the security piece, but I as protector civil am working collaboratively with all the other entities of the government and the civil society, so we can have that plan ready that can be implemented in parallel to the actions of the mission. And then once we finalize the first response, then the ongoing activities can, take over and be implemented progressively, so the population can be back to where it needs to be, and life can, be back in the community.
Thank you. Marsha, I have a somewhat similar question for you, but I also want you to expand a little bit on part of what I'm going to ask you. So the harms of the security situation seem to be falling disproportionately on marginalized communities and certainly along gender lines. Maybe you can develop a little bit or explain a little bit the impacts, particularly on women, of the security situation. But my question is, how should a security mission account for these differences among the population, particularly affecting marginalized and communities, and the impact along gender lines? What can the mission do to specifically address or create conditions for those problems to be alleviated to some extent?
Sure, thanks for the question. And before I answer that, I wanted to mention regarding the first question, when we talk about sort of training, and I see that a lot, training for police officers, which is happening with support from different parts, different countries, like INL, the International Bureau for Narcotics, has been providing a lot of support for training, Canada as well. But one thing we often don't talk about is sort of paying police officers. I think entry level for police officers are $200. And so how do we expect to have really a robust police system if they're not paid? A lot of them come from gang-infested areas. Their families live there. And so I think this is one component that is not often addressed, that needs to be included in any sort of a training support for police. And going back to your question in terms of impact on marginalized communities, I think disproportionately in any conflict, women and girls are disproportionately affected by violence. We've seen it in what's happening in gang-infested areas, right? There are a lot of rape, systematic rape happening, sexual assault, sexual violence against women and groups. A lot of houses have been burned down in those gang-infested areas in Cité Soleil, Carrefour, Forêt. And so right now we're accounting for close to 200,000 people displaced throughout Port-au-Prince. One thing that the mission, the force can do first is ensure security in those areas that are infected by gang violence. Ensure that there is, I haven't seen a lot of talk about this regarding to this Kenyan force, is to ensure a women in peace security component of this mission. Because of what we've seen in this time of security, when people are being displaced, a lot of them, a majority of them, are women and kids that are being affected. They tend to seek refuge near areas that have police. And I think depending on where the Kenyan force will be located, we'll see a lot of people trying to find refuge there. The first component is to ensure security, but also having a women and peace and security component as part of the mission to be able to address the issues that are happening in those areas. I mean, if you look at Haiti, everybody's been impacted by the violence. Schools have been closed, no access to hospitals or clinics. But looking at the expanding violence that is not only impacting Port-au-Prince, but is moving to outside areas, I think it's imperative to ensure that the security of women and that there is a component to address the violence and abuse that are particularly impacting women. We talk about the humanitarian crisis. More than half of the population is in need of foods and food. Over 1 million kids are suffering from malnutrition. And I think when you look at the numbers, these can lead to women facing more security and violence issues because they have to leave their home, because they have to find an income to be able to put food on the table and to provide their kids. And so hoping we continue with this dialogue and push for a particular aspect of the security force to address the impacts on marginalized population, especially women and kids who are most impacted coming out from gangs related areas.
Marcia, do you see this as something that the Kenyan-led mission itself can do, or is maybe this a component or some sort of an additional specialized unit or body or expertise that another member of the international community working with Haitian partners might be able to design? I fear that the Kenyan police might be very focused on hard security matters and not so much addressing some of the things that you've talked about.
Sure. I think the situation in Haiti, I think it is critical that there is a complement of the security force that is embedded, that is part of it to address these issues. I mean, we've seen it in UN-led mission, especially in conflict where there has been a lot of violence against women. It's part of it. And so I think we need to include it as a component of the Kenyan-led force. And I think there's still a lot that we don't know about this force that is potentially going to Haiti. But I think it's something for us, international organization, as well as civil society, to continue to push to address that there is that component included in it. I'm not saying that the Kenyan force can solve all of these issues, but I think it's critical for them to have that component view the violence that's been happening, especially against women and kids in Haiti.
Thank you. I want to pick up Fritz-Nel with some of the issues that Marcia has mentioned, and now looking a little bit out of Port-au-Prince into other areas of the country. A recent UN report, it was issued last week, in fact, noted that gangs which traditionally had been concentrated in Port-au-Prince have been moving into the countryside. The report specifically talks about the Bas-Artibonite to the north of Port-au-Prince. How is this going to further complicate the security situation? We're hearing reports of people displaced from the countryside. We're hearing more reports of violence against women. This is also going to put more pressure on the food crisis, given that these are areas that produce food in Haiti. How is this going to complicate the situation further? And again, given that we're talking about 1,000 police officers, if the crisis is growing, that number seems, to my mind, fairly inadequate.
It is fairly inadequate. If we have the national police, when you look at give and take, it's probably maybe Dr. Schindler, and correct me if I'm wrong, we'll probably have 9,000 or so police officers in duty right now in Haiti. So if 9,000 police officers, we know that some of them probably not trained enough, but we have some good police officers in the force that have been well trained. So they can't contain the situation. So what in the world we think that 1,000? I mean, I'm not in the inside of, I don't have inside information about really how they design the force or what made them decide it's 1,000 or, I know there's a lot of, background information on and talking points where other countries probably will send extra officers to add to the 1,000 officers from Kenya. But even if it's 5,000 or 6,000, I don't think the number of police officers, that's what matters really. And I don't think any number can resolve the problem if we don't tackle the root cause of the issues. So for short term, because that's what I call a band-aid solution. So we always have there. All these half a dozen missions that went to Haiti in the past. So we'll always have a sense of the resolution of the problem, but it's always short-lived. Once they leave, we fall back to the same situation again because we never really address the issue the way it should have been addressed. So I will circle back again to the will, the national will. So we have to have goodwill enough. We know we have a country. We need to build a country for common good, for the common good, for everyone to strive and live. It's not for a few, not for a minority of people to hold the whole population hostage. So, of course, it's spreading. It's been spreading because it's been out of control for the past 2 years. But mainly it's been concentrated in Port-au-Prince, now it's spreading. If we don't take action quickly, so it's going to spread around the country like it is already reached the northern part of Haiti, especially at the Atibonite area. But so as I said before, it's not a problem. It's not a country as a whole issue. It's an issue of the elites, the political elites, because no one have a clean hand on this. So we need to dig very deep in our soul as a country, as a people, to figure out why after almost 200, we're going to be 220 years, in existence as a nation since our independence, in a few days. Why now, all of a sudden, we have to depend on 1,000 forces from Kenya to show us security for us, to provide basic security to our children, to our women, to our, older people, vulnerable people in communities that's been left so many years, by themselves to strive, self-governance in a rural area for years, for decades. So, as I said before, they won't be able to resolve the problem just because we have 1,000 or so forces coming, because we need to tackle all of the areas, and then especially responsibility and accountability for those who are responsible for this situation.
Georges, I was going to ask you, or you want to make a comment on that?
Maybe just a quick
Please.
comment on
Yeah.
the issue of the Haitian National Police. I mean, I agree with the last comments. On any given day, I think the deployable force is probably even lower than 9,000, it's probably closer to 5,000. But I was going to point out that there's another sort of other constituency that provides security capacity in Haiti, and I think that's the large number of and different private security groups. It's a large number, it's unevenly trained and has uneven credibility, let's put it that way. But I think that's a capability that needs to be taken into account by any international security mission, because it's that capability that provides some of the protection at the neighborhood level. I'm not talking about vigilante groups here, but private security guards. That's the capability that somehow needs to be taken into account and perhaps in some way incorporated into the security capabilities moving forward, either as an add-on, if you will, to the Haitian National Police, or as an add-on, certainly, to the capabilities of an international security force.
Well, after Fritz-Nell's comments, I was going to ask you something about the political process, but since you've taken it back to the security, I'll ask you that and I'll get back to the political process maybe a little bit later. But Haiti's neighbors, CARICOM, the United States, Canada, what role are they going to play in support of the Kenyan mission?
Well, I think that's...
Or should they play?
Well, I think the short answer to the last part of your question is yes, they need to play, and they sort of play an uneven role at this point. I sort of see three different areas there in terms of the role they can play. One is, particularly for the United States, Canada, and other key actors. Whether they are willing to play that role, I think they've been somewhat reluctant to be charitable about it. But they play an important diplomatic role. It's after all, the influence of the United States that allows the sort of an international coalition of supporters to assist Haiti now. Kenya didn't come out of nowhere. It's an initiative that ultimately is derived from U.S. diplomacy. And I think that needs to be broadened. Secondly, obviously, United States, Canada, CARICOM, other actors can play also an important logistical role, intelligence, obviously financial and budgetary to make all this possible, and expand the coalition beyond Kenya. As already has been said, 1,000 Kenyans is not going to be enough. There's sort of islands of promises that have emerged, particularly from other CARICOM countries, but numerically this really has to grow beyond the 2,000 or 3,000 kind of force that even now optimistically we're contemplating. And I think the third role, particularly Washington can play, is a tricky area, which is sort of a discrete political role in ensuring that there is actually on the ground in Haiti a political consensus, a transition consensus, a governance consensus that allows all these various other initiatives, security, humanitarian, economic and social development, to ultimately move forward in a coherent fashion. It's tricky in the sense that it has an unfortunate history of trying to impose, if you will, outcomes, political outcomes in Haiti. But it can certainly play an important role in ensuring with Haitian partners that there is this sort of Haitian consensus that ultimately allows a lot of the initiatives that we're talking about here to move forward in a more consistent and coherent way.
So the governance consensus, this is, I think, very important. I think it was in your opening remarks, you mentioned that the Transition Council was kind of not doing very much right now, or inactive, I think was the word you used. How do we get that reactivated? Is that the proper vehicle to engage with the government and creating this governing consensus, providing, the governance framework, or at least some governance leadership that's needed to come in parallel with the security assistance?
The governance, the High Transition Council, I think from the beginning, the critique was 3 members is not enough. It needs to be more representative of a broader national societal consensus. I think there have been some discussions of how to expand that. What the CARICOM mediation effort, in fact, has identified is sort of a formula that would broaden the group to about 7, which would include including participation from the political community, from civil society, from churches and so forth in the private sector. I think that's in some ways the formula that one can ultimately look at by expanding the role of the High Transition Council as ultimately a consensus vehicle that also ultimately incorporates what's left, if you will, of the current interim government of Ariel Henry. That Transition Council also would become, in some ways, the consensus building exercise that ultimately is the one that not so much manages, but at least sort of provides some degree of credibility to all of these efforts from the international community moving forward on security, on humanitarian and economic development efforts. There are a lot of Haitian capabilities here. The problem is ultimately driving that consensus, having all the people sit around the table. Sometimes I'm not quite sure what the hang-up is, if you will, because the formula exists, but there needs to be, as some of the comments we've already heard from the panelists, there needs to be that sense that at this point Haiti needs that consensus, and Haiti has the right capabilities to do it. It just needs to happen quickly. My concern, if that doesn't happen, then in some ways we're ensuring a potential early failure of any effort by the international community.
I want to pass to Marcia for a question that's kind of maybe a flip side of what we were talking about a minute ago. You were talking about the need for having a women, peace, and security component in order to address issues that are specifically, obviously, affecting women given the security situation. I want to look at this, it's not directly connected, but in terms of looking at human rights, for instance. There have been clearly abuses by international forces in Haiti in the past. What guardrails can we put in place in order to ensure that that doesn't happen again? What guarantees, what oversight mechanisms, what reporting mechanisms, what kind of observers do we need to ensure that the international force that's deployed this time, or even some very small minority of its membership, engages in unacceptable behavior in Haiti?
Sure, this is a very good question. I think it's a difficult one to answer because when you look at UN peacekeeping missions, a lot of these incidents have happened in a number of countries: the Democratic Republic of Congo, Central African Republic. And in 1995, the UN put a system in place where there's a fund to address some of these issues, and they've started to publish the nationalities of the troops who commit these crimes. But the reality is that the UN can't do anything, prosecute these forces, and it's left to the home country to deal with the situation. I think there needs to be more robust accountability system, and it's a bit more tricky with this force, the Kenyans, because they're not technically they're not a UN peacekeeping missions. And so not sure who they answer to or report to. And so this will need to be a more, I would say, an independent oversight that should include civil society organizations. There are a number of human rights organizations in Haiti. I think there should be a group independent of these forces to monitor their actions on the ground and be able to report this immediately and make sure that these forces, the people who commit these crimes, are prosecuted. I think one part that I've seen in many other countries is there's no prosecution. Maybe sometimes financial support to the victims, but no prosecution. I think there needs to be a robust component, for sure, to include civil society organization, human rights organization that is independent of the forces to monitor potential abuses that might be committed by these forces. And again, these are the things that I think we, in part of the international community, to continue to push to make sure that there is accountability and protection for Haitians, to make sure that the crimes that have been committed in the past don't continue to happen by forces who are there to protect Haitians. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. I think my next question is really going to be for both Dr. Chandler and you, Fritz Nell. You can each address the respective side as a doctor, medical doctor, as a journalist. As a doctor, you will well know the trauma inflicted by firearms in the country, many of which are illicit firearms, and many of those, unfortunately, are arriving from the United States. Maybe on the medical side, can you describe a little bit the scale and the impact of violence by firearms. And perhaps Fritznel, maybe from the journalism side, what have you seen in reporting? What has been talked about in terms of where these firearms are coming from, and maybe some ideas for hopefully stemming the flow? There was a report. I think it's about a year old now, but at least the event was about a year old. But it's just come into the public consciousness recently about firearms being sent through the mail from Miami to the Episcopal Conference of Haiti, given that it has an exemption of inspection in customs. So, I mean, clearly traffickers are using very creative and unorthodox ways of getting firearms to the country. Could each of you address that question, perhaps with you first, Dr. Chandler?
Yes, certainly. Well, I'll address it as a physician and not necessarily the director of protection civil, because I have to make the separation. But yes, indeed, there is a serious issue regarding firearms circulation and firearms with the current gang crisis. And the problem is not only having people that are unauthorized, not trained, and not legal using firearms, but it's also the types of firearms. We from a medical perspective, we see high caliber tactical weapons being used in this violence, and it inflicts major trauma to those that actually survive wounds that they suffer from these guns. That's for one. Second, the second part of the issue, which is even more complicated, is the fact that those weapons are in the hands of people that are not trained. So it causes issues to direct issues, but it also causes indirect collateral issues to people that are living around or that are around these people doing the gang violence. And the third aspect is also more importantly the psychological impact. Because again, when we have seen patients that were rushed to emergency medical centers with major gunshot wounds that have to be addressed, and that leave, I would say, long-lasting impacts and psychological impacts. When people become impaired and physically impaired, have to have amputations and so forth and so on. And this impact is not only for the individual and psychology, but also it has an impact on the society itself, because we're talking about an individual that was productive for as much as it can be, that becomes now not functional and becomes dependent and vulnerable, and even more vulnerable than he was before. So again, all of these factors make it, all of these factors ought to be taken into account when we talk about guns and gun circulation. And again, this is I would say, one of the main root causes that are going to have to be addressed as part of what this security mission will have to do. And again, our panelists have talked about the number of officers, et cetera, but I think that it is important also to talk about strategy and tactics. I'm not a strategist, I'm not a specialist, but I think that the key to that fight or to that response will be what strategy, what tactics will be used, and also what tools will be put in place, because it's not just about coming with guns and just shooting. It's all about thinking, it's all about the thought process, it's all about the strategy and how to address it. So for that portion of the question, the medical aspect, I would say that the impact is severe. We have had some of our medical facilities that had to deal with major, very complicated cases, and also the impact at large on a societal basis is also very, very complicated to address. And we're going to need, I would say, social and psychological support for the population as we help the population go back, because again, it is traumatic and you have a population that is traumatized.
Fritznel, do you have some thoughts?
Yes. Well, the flow of firearms in Haiti has always been a complicated issue. I mean, you get so many different ways that, guns illicitly, flow into the country. So it will require a lot of work, nationally, I said the Haitian government, all the different structures of governance in the country, and with the partnership of the United States particularly, because most of the firearms that get into Haiti come from the United States. There's no doubt about it. And also, we have neighboring countries like Dominican Republic, which is another channel where the gun transit to get to Haiti very easily. So it's required effort from our side in Haiti to put policy. I mean, I'm looking at it in terms of policy and the business. In terms of a business, so people who selling guns, that's what they do. So you can stop them. They produce their guns, they're selling their guns. So in terms of policy, it's you as a country to have your own policy, your own mechanism to control how those guns, if whoever have the money to buy the gun for whatever purpose, they're buying it. And then, but you can control, you can put mechanism in place to control how these guns get into your country. So if you don't do this, so you cannot blame the source where the gun coming from. If you don't have any mechanism in place to stop it from getting to your street, getting to the wrong hand. So that's the policy aspect of it. But again, we need a partnership. So we can have all the mechanism in place in Haiti, but then we probably won't be able to have it work effectively if we don't establish good partnership with the United States on that, and then with Dominican Republic particularly. And then not just Dominican Republic, probably Jamaica, probably Trinidad and Tobago. The other places where, I mean, we are an island, we have so many other neighbors around us, so the gun can get through and then flow. And so we have to establish that. CARICOM will probably play a good role in that. The OAS will play a good role in that. So we have to have this broad consensus and to put that mechanism in place, and knowing that without this, the problem won't be solved.
Very good. I'll say we have 20 minutes left since we started 5 minutes late. I'd like to keep a good 15 minutes to ask the public if they have any questions. So if we have 5 minutes, I'm going to put all four of you on the spot. And hopefully you can just give me a short answer so we have enough time for the audience. As I mentioned at the very beginning, the Kenyan mission, right now at least, is tied up with some domestic politics. The mission is going through a review by the country's court to see if it's constitutional. What is the plan B? What happens if the Kenyan mission, for whatever reason, doesn't make it to Haiti? What happens then, given the security situation, the humanitarian situation that all of you have described? George, let's start with you.
My hunch is that openly there's really not a plan B at this point. Everything is dependent on the Kenyans, partly because of the numerical sort of number that ultimately Kenya represents, and by association, if the Kenyans ultimately move forward, it then allows other countries to provide more contributions beyond CARICOM, maybe South America and elsewhere. Maybe beyond that is maybe a sort of a broader intellectual political debate, sort of providing if you will, a global South solution to a problem that is in Haiti, and where the United States' traditional role, for better or for worse, and of Canada and other actors, doesn't seem to actually move the process forward in a favorable way.
Dr. Chandler?
Well, from my perspective as a director of protection civil, I have a duty and a responsibility to actually provide support and assistance to the population. So, as you said, is there a plan B? There are multiple plans. I mean, the alphabet has 26 letters, so has many plans. Now, the real question is how to find the resources to keep the support to the population going, to keep doing what we're doing, and also to keep providing what needs to be provided to the population until the root cause can be addressed. So up until now, and while we do this, we still have to keep an eye on natural disasters because we just closed the hurricane season. We still have the seismic threat. I mean, an earthquake can happen at any given moment. So it is our duty to still be prepared, still keep working, and making sure that these people get at least the minimum to be in a decent situation. As I said, it's not an easy task. It's not, again, it's never going to be 100% perfect, but the idea is to keep trying and to keep working and keep mobilizing. And that work that we're doing with the government, with the other partners of the government, but also with the international community, the UN partners, we will keep moving forward with it, and we will keep adapting the plan, molding it based on how the situation evolves.
Marcia?
Sure. I think one thing that I see that should be, George mentioned it as well, is the governance component. I think the political stalemate need to move forward. I think there's been a number of agreements with the Montana Accords, the December 21st agreement, and none of them has been moving forward. I think there needs to be a push for these agreements to take shape, to take reality. I think one commonality that I've seen is that the civil society and other political actors want to have an elected and legitimate government, which means for the current prime minister to step down. And I think these issues have to be addressed. I haven't seen a lot of tractions regarding these agreements from the international community, in particular the United States. And so I think some of these agreements at some point they have to be moved forward, which could mean the removal of the prime minister to make way for elections, to push things forward, to have elected officials, to address the violence in country. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Fritznel?
Well, security assistance, international security assistance to Haiti has been, for the past 2 years, like an advent to Haitians. So we've been waiting, and it's never arrived. But probably perhaps a blessing in disguise, because if it doesn't happen, but I really sincerely hope it happens, because people in a lot of vulnerable communities in desperate need to secure roads and for free-flowing, people and goods and so on, and healthcare and some, hospital taken hostage by gangs and so. So we need some sort of assistance very quickly, but it's still delayed, it's not coming. It's probably help ourselves as a people. As I said at the beginning, to dig deeper into ourselves, to figure out how in the world we can come up with a consensus, a good consensus that take into account all different unresolved disputes, issues, and differences we have for decades among ourselves as people. And that way we draw a plan, a real plan that will solve the problems we have. That's one aspect of it. But the other aspect of it is probably we really get, in the government perspective, they really liberate the national police. You know, get rid of this structure that too political, too factional, to make sure that the police get what they need to do their job. I am a firm believer that I observe it and I've been seeing for years that we have good police officers and within that force that want to really secure the country, really to work. But sometimes they're handicapped by the political side of the thing. They're handicapped by the minority of, group of people that want to control everything under their hands, and then they're not willing to liberate the structure of the national police to be able to protect and serve as the motto is. So that's one aspect. And then the third and final aspect of the situation that could arrive from that mission not coming is probably we have a better support from the international community. They probably get this soul searching into themselves as well to see where they are at fault and what's happening in Haiti, and they come up with the real support that what really Haiti needs to tackle the different aspects of the issue we face today. Thank you.
Thank you, Fritzinel. I have a few questions here from the audience. I get the questions here on my phone. I promise you, I'm not looking at social media. The first question is for Fritzinel, and actually, having looked at this question, it may be appropriate for you, Georges, to also comment because you mentioned something about this a little while ago. The question is, what should the role of the U.S. be in the next 6 months? Specifically, how exactly should it support the organization of the community groups and NGOs that have been holding Haiti together? You had mentioned that at one point. But it's addressed to you, Fritzinel, so maybe you could offer some comments and then we can give George a minute to chime in.
Yeah, thank you for the question. For too long, so the U.S. has been playing this kind of game with Haiti where the country become too dependent on them. Not just financially, but on policy decision as well. So we need to kind of have a step back and look at history and learn the lesson from not just from what was negative about the history or relationship with the U.S., but also what positive come out of it. Because it's not just one side story. It's not like, okay, everything's bad about what the U.S. have done since 1862 when they officially established their diplomatic relationship with Haiti. And then going to, from in 1915 when they invaded Haiti the first time. So to today, so it's not everything. It's not like all negative. We have a lot of good stuff that happened. If there were continuity on this, we would have been better off. But so we need to take the lesson from them and on what was good and continue on that aspect. But for now, what the U.S. can do is to help foster a real dialogue. I'm not thinking about the money part of it, the financial assistance of it, because most people will say, oh, they need to probably provide more aid, but the millions, billions been given to Haiti. And then nothing changed. You get things get worse over the years. So it's not a question of money, that we don't have a money problem in Haiti. I will repeat that, continue to repeat that, time and time again. We don't have money problem. We have a mindset, we have a mentality, we have a mental issue. We need to address as a people. We need to dig deep into our soul to find out why we can't have a consensus around what we need as a nation to build a country. So that's probably where the U.S. role will be very important, because so many people thinking that the U.S. has the solution for us. So maybe they probably take that as a complement, and then practically run with it, and then foster a really good dialogue among Haitians to reconcile themselves, among themselves, within themselves. And then so probably that's when we'll probably have a better situations on the ground in Haiti.
Josh, how can the U.S. help rally this ecosystem of NGOs that are holding the country together?
Well, let me answer maybe two different ways. One is to pick up what Fritz Neville was just saying, which is the notion that Haitians among themselves need to drive that consensus. It doesn't mean that the United States, through intermediaries, can't try to help to mediate that process, whisper into people's ears that something needs to be done fairly quickly. The pieces are there, so it's not defining the problem from the international side, but defining the solution with strong Haitian content. That ultimately likely assures that it is credible and durable, moving the country towards, as was mentioned before, an electoral calendar and beyond. If I can pick up on the second comment related a little bit to the gun issue a moment ago, one other thing the United States could do, let me maybe identify two quick comments. One of them is conceptually, for policymakers, conceptually turn the border security issue to, in fact, not address simply what comes into the United States, but actually what leaves the United States. Because the gun problem, that's beyond Haiti, frankly. It's a Caribbean basin and Mexico problem, is what leaves the United States. And clearly, U.S. authorities either turn a blind eye or have no clear sense of what actually leaves the country legally and illegally towards the region, including Haiti. The irony in the case of Haiti, for example, is technically a prohibition of sales of those kinds of things. Clearly, that's a totally meaningless aspect of U.S. law. The other issue, which I would say may be directed at particularly political leadership, Capitol Hill in particular, is to try to address this issue from the perspective of the American taxpayer. The American taxpayer ends up actually paying two different ways here. It both subsidizes programs through INL, as mentioned earlier, and other government agencies and offices to combat trafficking and violent groups in the region. Those same violent groups are actually financed in part and gunned, if you will, to use the term, through resources and guns coming in for the United States. This is a completely absurd situation. And maybe if there was a more public awareness of that question, it might actually go try to, if you will, unlock a little bit the paralysis of this issue in the context of U.S. gun laws and the sort of open-ended availability of those weapons.
Another question I have here, we haven't really addressed this, so I'm glad somebody has asked this question. Violence, health crises, food insecurity, and more issues have driven many Haitians to leave their homes, producing a regional, or contributing, I should say, to a regional migration crisis. In addition to security assistance, what is needed from the region, including the U.S. and CARICOM members, to better address the needs and vulnerabilities of Haitian migrants and refugees? I throw that out to the entire panel. Who would like to, perhaps you, Marcia, would like to get share some thoughts on that?
Sure. I think it's been a really tragedy to see how migrants have been trying to find their route to Haiti. We know about the Darien passage in Panama. It's really horrible. And so migrants go through a lot to leave the situation they are in. And I think a support mechanism, a system to assist Haitians who are leaving the country. There have been different programs from the U.S. government, the Biden administration, to support Haitians living. But I think there needs to be more done at the regional level to support those that are leaving. And it's not putting them in jail, but really assisting their needs. Some of them get sick through the journey. We've seen pregnant women traveling as well. sort of a mechanism to support them, especially I think now there've been a new route going from Central America. There have been flights out of Haiti and a support system where migrants are not criminalized for fleeing dangerous situations.
All right, I think we'll end with one last question, and I have several still here. I'm not sure which one I should ask. I think one we've kind of covered before. One is highly technical. Wait, I'm just getting a last one from the Tom Lantis Institute. So I'm going to read this live as I haven't read it ahead of time. Some members of Congress have insisted over time that any security response must go hand in hand with a political pathway, a condition not met by the upcoming deployment. The panelists have talked about the need to broaden the mechanism meant to create some kind of political consensus. Why have the Montana Accords and other civil society-led efforts to create precisely that kind of consensus apparently been sidelined? What is missing from those civil society efforts? Why has the administration been so unwilling to address them? It's a fairly long question, perhaps. Georges, we could start with you as you're taking notes. I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
It's an intriguing question to find at the end of this discussion. Let me try to provide a short answer. Montana actually provided a structure and a very reasonable, credible process now, which is almost 2 years old. It's been sort of incorporated by competing efforts. There was a reference earlier to the December the 21st agreement, which is closer politically to the interim prime ministers. What I found appealing, why I mentioned in my introductory comments, the plan that's outlined in the CARICOM mediation efforts actually builds on all of that and tries to incorporate all of this into this notion of a transition plan. I think the pieces are in place. What's missing, as I said, is maybe the whispering into both leadership of the Montana as well as other political forces in Haiti, including the interim prime minister, that this is a deal that cannot be missed, that ultimately some arrangement like this needs to be put together. And it is incumbent upon them to find that agreement soon, because in some ways the success of an international security mission, plus all of the rest of the assistance that they provided from the international community, in some ways is anchored to this sort of credible governance transition process.
Thank you, Georges. Marcia, you mentioned a few things that were directly related to this. Would you like to perhaps have the last word on this question and on the panel?
I'm sure. I think it's really important that there can't be agreement over agreement and over agreement again. I think there needs to be accountability, and I think this should lie with the Prime Minister Aliya Henry to agree to the terms of agreement. From the outside, it seems that Haitian civil society and other political actors came together and decided, which can be difficult in Haiti, which decided on a pathway to move forward with the political stalemate. But there's not a sense that the government is in agreement with that pathway. And so I think there needs to be some accountability, because after a while, we're going to lose that momentum with the agreements that seems to have been had with the civil society and different political actors to get the country out of the political stalemate that it is in right now.
Thanks very much, Marcia. We're out of time. I think we're going to have to leave it at that. I'd like to thank you, Georges, Dr. Chandler, Marcia, and Fritznel, of course, Wolf Pamphile, and our friends at the Haiti Policy House for this very interesting discussion on security assistance for Haiti. Thank you very much, and we look forward to hosting you again to continue our discussion on Haiti in the future. Have a good day.